Okay, today I'm going to be talking about the different things you need to take into consideration when buying an e-bike. And I'm going to be basing some things on the stats of my Super 73R series. And here it is. Today! Don't you like how I always start out that way? Today! Well, today we're going to talk about 15 considerations when buying an e-bike. And excuse me, I'm going to be comparing, the different considerations and technical specifications and etc. to kind of my Super 73R series that I showed at the beginning of this video, just to give you some comparison, etc. And I might engage other types of bikes as well, just for comparison's sake. So 15 considerations. So one is the type of bike you're buying. This is when you're buying an electric bike, the term electric bike has a lot of different meanings. It could be a regular do-it-yourself mountain bike that you have a conversion kit for $700 put on it, and it's got now a motor and a battery. That could be an electric bike. An electric bike could be a mountain bike, high-end, for $7,000 that you get, and it's tracker specialized, and it's got an integrated battery into the frame, and it's got a 250 watt motor that helps you pedal up hills. Doesn't give you tremendous speed, but it gives you a little extra boost. You could have a bike like this, which is kind of like a mini motorbike, if you will, with a motor and a battery, all integrated. Or you could have one that's kind of like a free ride bike, which is like a motorcycle, if you will. Rarely even has pedals, kind of like the Suron or the Segway, that has insane torque and power, range, and off-road capabilities. So you got to figure out, do you want a do-it-yourself conversion kit? Do you want a regular mountain bike that has, all the components built in already? Do you want a free ride bike that really is like a glorified electric motorcycle? Or do you want a bike kind of like the Super 73, which has got the 20 by 4 inch tires? It's a lot like the Case and Cabot, the Aerial Rider, X and D class, the Juiced Hyper Scorpion, Hyper Scrambler, that type of class. So you got to figure out, what do you want? What type of bike do you want? Next, very, very, very important, is suspension. A lot of bikes have no suspension. A lot of bikes have suspension forks just in the front, meaning it's a hardtail, so it has no suspension in the back. And then a lot have full suspension. This bike, for example, has full suspension, as where the Super 73 S2 only has front suspension. Super 73 Z1, for example, has no suspension. So you got to figure out, what kind of suspension do you want? And I can tell you, from having both a just front suspension and front and rear, if you're going to do any kind of off-road riding at all, you really want a front and rear. It really helps your butt a lot. Gives you a lot more cushion. It absorbs the bumps of the road, of the dirt, the rocks, the hills, the knots in the road, the tree trunks, all that kind of stuff when you're going through off-road. It really helps absorb both, all that. So, what kind of suspension do you want? The next one is tire size. Like I said, you can get a mountain bike with 1.5 inch wheels, 1.5 inch wide tires, 26, 27 inch wheels. That's the standard mountain bike size. Or you could get kind of like what I'm riding, Super 73, which has 20 inch wheels and 4 inch wide tires, right? And the ranges in the tires and the wheels kind of are all there in between as well. You can get 2 inch wide, etc., etc. So you got to figure out what kind of size wheels you want. And obviously with the fat tires that I'm riding, gives you more cushion, more bounce, gives you more traction in things like dirt and gravel, because you've got these huge tires to pull you through. So there's that as a consideration. And a parallel consideration, which I guess gives it 16 instead of 15 on this this analysis here, is do you want street tires? Do you want dirt tires? Do you want hybrid tires that are kind of both, etc. Another consideration is, what type of motor do you want? And I just did about 4 videos back a video about hub versus mid-drive. Hub is what I showed you in the beginning of this video, which is having a motor in the back of your bike. It's disconnected from the pedal drive system, so that the sprocket, the chain, etc. Or do you want a mid-drive, which is in the middle of the bike? It's actually integrated into the sprocket. It typically gives you more torque, etc. So you got to figure out what kind of motor you want. You also have to look at speed. And speed has a lot of variables. Speed based on torque, you know, from a dead stop. Typically mid-drives have more torque. Top speed, how fast you can go on the, you know, at the very top end, etc., etc. Now, speed and range is how far you can go on a full charge. And what's crazy is the range keeps getting higher and higher. So range is kind of dependent upon numerous things, including bike weight, your weight, how aggressive you're riding, etc. Let me kind of break down the battery components for you, which really have a lot of direct impact onto how fast you can go, how far you can go, etc., etc. So there's like 4 different things you got to think about. Well, 3 different things. The size of the battery in terms of how many volts does it have, and that typically translates into the actual physical size of the battery. You got 36 volt, you got 48 volt, and you got, every once in a while, very rare, I've never really seen one, a 52 volt. Obviously the higher the volts, the more power. Voltage is actually the flow rate of power through the battery. So 36 volt, not going to give you as much flow rate of power as a 48 or a 52. So higher voltage means more flow of power through the battery. Then you want to look at amp hours. And amp hours, usually it's AH, is the battery capacity. And again, higher amp hours, the better. The Super 73, for example, has 960 amp hours, which is like insane. It's like the biggest battery. You saw the battery on the front of this bike. It looks like a motorcycle tank. It's huge. The other consideration is watt hours. Now, watt hours, usually WH, is how many watts can be delivered from the battery to the motor in an hour. And typically you have between 300 and 1,000 watt hour batteries. Yes, you can go higher. Typically you can't. Typically, you know, the average bike is going to have in that range. On the low end, you have, let's say, you know, the 300. It's not going to give you as much power. It's not going to give you as much distance, you know, range, etc., etc. On the high end, obviously a lot more power output, higher end speed, faster typically from a dead stop to some degree, and more range. So there's a lot to be said in terms of battery. I'm probably going to get some hate from some know-it-alls that think that, you know, I'm not saying it right, but I'm just trying to give you some general information. If you're going to buy a bike and you really want to dig in to the amp hours and the watt hours and the voltage and all that, then look it up. But I'm just trying to give you like an overview at the very top level, okay? So hopefully I don't get any haters for this. Another consideration, and I lost track of count. Maybe I'm at 15, maybe I'm at 26, I don't know. So I just know that I'm giving you a lot of different considerations. Another one is pedal assist versus throttle. So right now I'm pedaling this bike and it's giving me extra push. It's like somebody's pushing me from behind. It's giving me assistance when I pedal. And most bikes have different ranges of pedal assist, from typically maybe 1 to 5 or 1 to 3. 1, you're just getting a little assistance. 3 or 5, you're getting a lot of assistance. So if you're going up a hill, you probably want to use pedal assist 5. So you want to get a bike, you have to decide if you want your bike to have both pedal assist and throttle. Throttle, you see with my finger here, I'm just pushing the button. It's kind of like push a button or twist the throttle. It's just like using a motorcycle's thrust, right? It's just without doing any effort at all, no pedaling, it's thrusting you forward. Some bikes, for example, Super 73 Z1 doesn't have pedal assist. It only has throttle. A lot of the other bikes on Super 73's line have pedal assist and throttle. You probably want both if you're really going to keep an e-bike for a long time. It gives you a lot more flexibility in how you ride. And obviously every bike, if it has pedals and a sprocket and a chain, you can pedal it without any kind of power as well. So that would be the third mode, if you will. Something else to consider is how specialized and unique is the bike. The Super 73, for example, has a lot of very specialized parts. It has specialized bolts. It's very specialized in how it integrates the tire into the back forks. It puts it in at a weird angle. So you probably could buy some standard parts for it, but it might not necessarily fit the bike. So you want to figure out if you're getting a bike that has standard parts that you can interchange, or does it have specialized parts? Something to think about. Another thing is, if you have a standard mountain bike, like a 26.5 or 27-inch wheel size mountain bike, and it's got an external battery that's kind of put on it, and it's got a motor, you can take it to a bike shop and they can put it in one of their stands. It's got the arm that can clamp on the bike frame and hold it up so they can work on it. A bike like this one, a fat bike, for example, and some other configurations of bikes, e-bikes, can't fit in those clamps, those stands. And I've actually had 2 different bike shops tell me, we can't put it in the stand, it's hard to work on, we're not going to work on it. Or we're going to charge you more money per hour to work on it. So just think about that. You really have to consider, is there an e-bike shop nearby that can actually work on it for you, right? If you get the fat tire type, or the big fat bike type bike. The next thing to consider is the seat height. A lot of really cool mini bikes. If you look at like the Jetson Bolt, if you look at the Super 73 Z1, if you look at some of the smaller bikes, they have really low seats, in like the 20s, and it's really hard to pedal. If you're short on the low end of height, then maybe that works for you. If you're a younger person, maybe that works for you. If you're on the taller end and you're over 5'10", 5'11", 6 foot, then you probably want a decent sized seat height, or it's going to be really hard for you to pedal. The Jetson Bolt, for example, this little mini bike, they just came out with a new version that has pedals. A Jetson Bike Pro, for example, it's $500 bucks. It's really popular. It's very low end in terms of quality, but it has a drivetrain. You can pedal it, but it is so freaking short. Like, I can't imagine you'd be able to really pedal it, you know what I mean? So same thing with the Z1 of the Super 73. It's got, you can pedal it as well. No pedal assist, but you can pedal it. It's got the chain and the sprocket and all that, but it's so low to the ground that your knees almost hit your chest when you pedal. It's really uncomfortable. You have no leverage. So that's something else to consider. So anyway, those are hopefully some things that really help you figure out what type of bike you want. A lot of different considerations to take into account. And again, just giving you kind of the cursory level of knowledge here, just to make you aware. If you want to deep dive in any of these areas, obviously there's tons of articles on the internet. Anyway, hope this helps. God bless. Peace out.